Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, Professor David, Professor Devji, Mr. Sumit Kumar, our respected deans, as well as CAO ma'am, to please come on the stage to join us.
Good afternoon, all the respected dignitaries, faculty members, officers, and my dear students. We are very glad to have you with us for today's session. So, artificial intelligence has evolved well beyond generating content and answering questions. We are now entering the age of agentic AI, where systems can think, plan, and act independently to solve complex real-world problems. The shift is especially significant for supply chains, which today has to be fast, data-driven, and resilient to disruption. The session is also special for another reason. It marks a long-awaited moment for IIM Mumbai. Over the past few years, we have had the privilege of running several global online certification courses in association with Professor David, covering areas such as data-driven supply chain transformation, business analytics, Gen AI for business decisions, and data-driven supply chain transformation. Since 2021, we have completed over 18 such programs together, reaching more than 22,000 participants from different countries across organizations ranging from Flipkart, Cipla, Micron, P&G, HUL, Reliance, Accenture, Deloitte, and many more. Each of these courses have been well received, largely owing to Professor David's case-based practical teaching style, while participants across every batch have valued. Despite this long collaboration, we hadn't had the opportunity to host him in person at IIM Mumbai until today. We are therefore especially thankful to Professor David to be here with us, and we are grateful to our director sir for making this possible. We are thankful to Professor Devjit Roy and Mr. Sumit Srivastava for taking out time to join us today. So I now request our director sir, Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari, to welcome and felicitate our keynote speaker, Professor David, before we begin the proceedings. So sir, may I now invite Professor David and director sir to the stage. directors and Davidson. Next, it is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Simchi-Levi. Mr. Simchi-Levi is a partner and leader for Agentic Automation at PwC India, where he leads the firm's automation and AI transformation practice, helping organizations, including global capability centers, adopt Agentic AI, intelligent process automation, and GenAI-powered solutions at scale. He has also played a key role in PwC strategic alliances with automation platforms such as UiPath and Automation Anywhere. He is an alumnus of IIM Mumbai, having completed the PGDIM program in 2003. Sir, may I now invite Mr. Simchi-Levi sir to share his insights on AI trends in the Indian corporate sector.
Am I audible? Yes. Thank you. Good evening to everyone. Good evening, Professor, for honoring all of us to be with your presence itself. It's an honor to interact. Little did I realize when we were having an interaction before coming here, and I was going through your LinkedIn profile. You started working the year I was born. So that's the kind of experience you have in the room, guys. So please make use of the opportunity. It's been a very great honor to be back to the institute and talking in front of our professors, some of them who have been teaching me as well in terms of how some of these very critical subjects in industry has evolved. And I'm going to give you a view on how AI and Agentic AI has actually evolved in the Indian sector, Indian market itself. I play a role where I'm leading this for PwC in India, but also play the role as a global delivery head. So I've been involved in large-scale AI agentic programs across the world. And India is very, very critical to a lot of those programs. A, because of the talent pool. B, because a lot of large global corporates have got GCC set up here in India. And most of these large programs have a greater part of the execution capabilities which is being run from here itself. I've got that experience in terms of working with some of the most complex engagements, and I'm going to share some of those learnings with you. Maybe also very important, many of us were not born during that time when the Industrial Revolution started. If some of us would be watching old movies, Naya Daur was one of the movies where they felt that, how it transformed the worker class, where, you were using machines to change the way people were actually producing goods through using their hands itself, be it in the manufacturing or even in the agricultural side itself. And there was a lot of resistance for change. The same evolution or revolution, I would say, is happening nowadays, where whatever cognitive capabilities we were using to produce output is now getting, can be executed using AI technologies. So this transformation is obviously required a lot of us to change the way we are actually educating ourselves, the way we are providing services to our end clients, and the way we are creating solutions. And that's something which is very important to say, that we are again going through a similar era of a fast-forward kind of change, because the AI revolution gives the power to do more with our minds. So whatever we were applying our minds many years before, or even 5 years or 10 years before, is no longer where you need to do it right now on your own and apply your mind in a more effective manner itself. And this is where the AI revolution becomes even more critical, the way we are educating ourselves. Now, just to give you some background around, the AI revolution we're talking about, Agentic AI, this journey started at least a couple of decades back. And, if I talk about a lot of cognitive capabilities which we as human beings have evolved ourselves through generations of our existence, such as, basically image recognition, what we see and how our brain interprets that information, the speech and the text part of it, understanding the emotions of the other person, the writing, analysis, what we do itself. A lot of this comprehension of speech and reading comprehension, what we had understood, and which was very core to the human cognitive abilities, is something which AI today understands. And this graph actually talks about what is the level of performance of AI today in almost all of these areas, either at par or better than human beings. So if I'm writing a code as a human being, AI can do that better. If I am basically trying to do a language understanding, AI in many of the cases would be able to do that language understanding much better than I would be. AI would be able to answer to me in a much better response than I as an individual could be because of the collective knowledge which AI has an ability today. So if you look at any area today, AI today has a good level of maturity, and that is why this is one of the biggest disruption in the industry, which we all are facing into the different kind of activities we're involved in. So this is just to give a background, and since I had to give a view in terms of how the evolution of AI in the industry in India is happening, I wanted to give again data points. I think so some of this, if you would, earlier also, just a few months back, I think so I had shared, but I'll again take you through some more finer details itself. So we did a survey, an industry survey, and went back to our corporates. I selected 110 organizations which were already in this journey, where the promoters and the CEOs were actually having discussions with our teams to say that how do I leverage AI into that. So we went back to them with certain set of questions. I'm also giving you details of the kind of coverage which we had. Pretty much almost all the sectors we covered out here. Interestingly, even from a size standpoint, almost 59% of the respondents were above $5 billion of revenue. In Indian context, it's 50,000 crores plus kind of revenue. So it's a sizable amount of big organizations. Almost 22% of the organizations had more than 50,000 employees working for them. 10 to 50,000 employees, 36% of the respondents. So they were pretty fairly impactful organizations, and this data point would give you an insight into the pulse of the Indian corporate of where they are as part of the AI adoption. So it's not just talking about few handful of companies, the most forward-looking companies out there. And again, from a coverage standpoint, if you look at right from healthcare, life sciences to technology, media, telecom, retail and consumer, financial services, all of those critical sectors, manufacturing, were covered as part of that survey. So we went and talked to these organization CEOs and asked them this for the Indian market, in terms of where do they see the AI transformation in the next 6 to 18 months, because it's very important to understand where they are investing their money. And the good point was that at an enterprise level, all the CEOs said, and almost if you look at the data points, more than 95% said that within next anywhere from 3 to 24 months, they will be having an enterprise-wide AI or an agentic program running in. Okay, so this is a transformation. By the time, if some of you who are into different phases of your curriculum within the institute, by the time you may be passing out, or maybe in the first year of your job, or if you are doing any other I would say postgraduate kind of course itself, you will figure out that most of these companies would already be using at an enterprise-wide AI initiatives. So the way the work is being done today, as of what it will happen 6 to 18 to 24 months later, is going to be very different itself. Interestingly, we also asked a question that where they are today as part of the AI adoption. And just to give you some data points out here, we did this survey in the month of December 2025. So it's been already 6 months by this time this data came out. And interestingly, what I've also realized is what happened in Middle East has actually fast-tracked the entire AI initiatives in each of these organizations, because they want to bring in resiliency in their business models, and AI is the only way of how they can do that itself. So we'll be doing again a refresh of this survey in next 5-6 months itself. I know the data points are only going to get much more enhanced rather than on the lower side itself. So at that point of time, 6 months before, if you look at the submission part of it, there were already 9% of the organizations which were in this journey of an enterprise-wide adoption. These were the CEOs who are thumping their chest in CIIs and NASSCOMs of the world and saying, here is the model of how I have transformed themselves. There is a sense of insecurity in the leadership community to say, I don't want to miss the bus. I've gone into board meetings, and very surprising, a lot of years I've spent in the industry, never in my life it has happened that I've gone into a meeting, and by the time I'm coming out of the meeting, there is an agreement on what we are going to deliver and also on the commercials. People do not want to waste 3 weeks, 4 weeks of time of table tennis, ping pong, to say, okay, give me a commercial, then I'll come back to you, then we'll negotiate on the price, no questions. What organizations are saying, I need your skin in the game, sign on the outcome, sign on the value which is being delivered, and here is the check for you. It has changed. Decision making has changed drastically, and we are seeing today most of the organizations in a euphoria to catch that bus, which is a reality in the Indian corporate. Now we went further ahead to say what were the drivers for the AI adoption for these organizations. A very important point to say that, is it only about cost reduction, or is it about improving customer experience? Very interestingly, these were the obvious questions which anybody would say, I want to improve customer experience, reduce my costs. But also on business differentiation. Today, smaller organizations are saying it's like winning in the turns. I know there is a turn happening in the race, that is where somebody who might be ahead of the race by the time the turn ends, the person who might seem to be last is ahead now. So there are many of these organizations who are saying, I can compete with the biggest player in my industry by leveraging AI. And that's the model of how people are very much energized and have a first mover advantage out there. So business differentiation has become a critical model of how organizations are looking at. I'll give you an example. Met again a promoter of an organization. They said, we look at design patents. They were doing a lot of fabric manufacturing in India, and they said, we follow the design patents. What we have realized, what happens in Europe, 6 months behind those patent changes comes to India. That's a trend over decades what they have seen. So for example, if there is a fabric which is of pastel colors, block printing, which has now come up in Europe, I know 6 months down the line it will start hit the Indian market. So they could now realize that what is the inventory which they have, what is the inventory movement, what is happening, and what percentage of their particular kind of SKUs of the product will become dead stock in 6 months from now. That's the intelligence which they have today. And what they'll do is, if Diwali is around the corner or you have Ganpati festival coming in, I will create a campaign and I'll say do a 20, 50, 30% discount and get this inventory out before it becomes dead stock for me. That's the intelligence which people are looking at. I stitch sales data along with my financial data and the supply chain data, marry them together and create decisions out of the insights which is getting generated by this by the AI technology itself. So that's where organizations today have become much more differentiated in their offerings, the way their services are looking at. Again, important aspects in terms of better regulatory compliances, managing workforce shortages are some of the previous, or I would say very obvious kind of questions. Interestingly, managing workforce shortages, only 6% of the people said is their driver. It was largely about customer experience. It was largely about cost, obviously, and business differentiation. That's how the organization and the CEOs today are looking in the Indian market for the AI adoption perspective. The other question we are also asking in terms of, what are the business functions? And at that point of time, finance and accounting, customer experience, operations were largely the ones. I still, the slide mentioned top 3, but I included supply chain. What happened after the Middle East war? Certainly, resiliency in supply chain became the topmost priority. Before coming here in the morning, I had a meeting with one of the leading chemical manufacturing company in the country. They prepare or rather produce adhesives, which are number 1 in that market space. All the chemicals are are petrochemicals, dependency on Middle East market. What do? They were having, the COVID period brought from just in time to just in case to say, okay, I will have 3 months more of extra, I would say, inventory I'll keep for some of the raw materials itself, but right now they don't see any end to it. And now they're looking at very alternate models of how they can actually bring in resiliency in the supply chain. That's a very, very critical business point today for most of the organizations of how to do this all. I think so some of the relevance of the course which you're going to talk about, or the subject which was also put as the model out here, is very, very critical for organizations today. What if I am adhesive manufacturer, the leading one in the country, and I use certain chemicals which are petrochemical based, and I get those supplies from Middle East, which no longer is available to me. I will be out of market. and what is the model of how I can sustain that business problem itself. Again, supply chain becoming much more critical. The other question which we are then asking in terms of what kind of ecosystem organizations are looking at. Now, if you would have seen that, there are the Indian startups which are coming up, trying to come up with some of these AI platforms. You have the hyperscalers which have come up with their own solutions itself. And organizations are saying that, okay, what should I do? Should I invest in a Google Stack or Microsoft, or in, look at some of the Indian-based solutions which have come up? I think so. It's a bit divided right now. People are a bit watchful to say, where should I go? A lot of people, and interestingly what has happened is many specialized solutions also came in. Specialized solutions where they said that if you're looking for, say, financial agents, I have ready financial agents. If you're looking at supply chain, I have ready supply chain agents itself. So time to deliver will be much shorter. Now, interestingly, what happened when the survey was done, companies like Anthropic were only a language model company. What happened in the last 6 months, which is not covered in the survey, is that they came up with their own agentic platform. They also came up with their own specialized language models for risk and legal. So today, Anthropic says that if you want to have a risk and legal agentic solution, you don't even have to use just my LLM. I have a specialized LLM for this, and I have an orchestration there, and you can use that very effectively. And by the way, majority of the organizations which were already using Claude, it's just an extension of my contracting nature, just to bring in additional module, and I can get my hooks into your organization itself. So the language models today, and those companies, the OpenAIs and Anthropics of the world, are also venturing into that area, no longer just saying that I am a language model provider there itself. It's going to be a very interesting point when we again redo this survey and ask the question of the solutions. I wouldn't be surprised that we will see some new versions of these language models becoming the tool of choice when it comes to agentic also into the listing. The other question was in terms of what kind of innovation and implementation at speed balancing act organizations are looking. Because as I look at AI and innovation, it's like a continuous improvement. It's not a journey which organizations would say, I do it for as a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month program, and then I'm done and dusted. No. This is a journey which they will continue to keep on refining over the period of the years, and the models will become even more complex and mature as they start using it itself. Almost every organization, and a good percentage today, have realized that I need to have an internal center of excellence. For a reference, and before coming here, we were again sitting inside the boardroom looking at the type of organizations which comes and hired from this institute. I can tell you, each of those organizations today are setting up their own internal AI center of excellence. Because they realize that I don't want to go to consulting firms and say, please bring your expertise. They will still come for some very specialized kind of expertise, but it is going to be a business as usual model. And those AI COEs within their organizations would work with their business departments to create those very specific solutions which organizations would be looking at. So the in-house COE build-up is something which will only extend with time, what we are seeing. Again, a combination of building, organizations saying, can I use third-party tools, or some of them still undivided. That's something, the euphoria which every organization is, but my prediction out here, if I have to say, what will change, because this is still 6 months old data, we will see in-house COEs being above 50% to 60% by the next survey. That's the reality. Okay, the last point which I wanted to share, we talked about a lot of insights about how AI is being used, how organizations are adopting it, but we also feel there are some myths and truths itself. There are, if you go on ChatGPT today, any business function, you type, give me use cases for agentic AI in the area of pick up anything. You call it supply chain, HR, finance, and you get a long list. So everybody felt that identifying use cases or lack of understanding is no longer an issue. But when we went deeper into conversations at a board level, we realized at a board level and a senior level, people still do not have a good understanding of how they can transform their businesses using these technologies in per se. And that is where there is a lot of engagement happening to talk about these subjects. Very interestingly, I'll give you data points. I know there are a lot of leadership programs which are run by your institute, by my institute I should say, and me and my company is also helping in ensuring that we are covering some part of the agentic AI. But that's the reality today, what is happening. We also have within PwC, we have a AI lab which is set up, and looked at some data points. Last year, we had 200 visits. So one visit means one full day, we block the lab. It's more of an experience discussion. There are a lot of solutions and tools which we demonstrate there. Out of 365 working days, more than 200 days, the lab was booked for the clients. There was so much of demand coming, we said we need more labs itself. So we set up there was one in Delhi, and we are now setting up another one in Bangalore itself, because the volume is coming so much. People want to experience these solutions, have the touch and feel. They want to get into an experience center and see how these technologies are getting leverage out there. So at a board level, there is still a lot of recalibration of understanding which is required. Is ROI a concern when the pilots become? No. Organizations today, the moment, you would have realized that how much of token utilization organizations are doing when they haven't put their mind to how the adoption is going to happen. And I know a lot of organizations, euphoria, they said, yes, I've got it, let's get started. 6 months down, they said, oh my God, my token cost is so much. It's not that you're going to put everything to an LLM. You may still find that there are areas where you may go back to Python and ML programming rather than using AI tokens for everything itself. And now they're saying, I've increased my technical debt. How do I rationalize my token cost? And that becomes another consulting assignment where we come in and say, okay, this is where you shouldn't be using LLMs because the cost is getting higher itself. So whether while there is a value, are you having the right kind of ROI? It's still, the maturity within the organization is still not there. Risk and governance is viewed at regulatory hurdles. A lot of organizations, thanks to what came out in news few months back, or rather a few weeks back itself, some of these language models, when they were doing testing of their, model into a lab environment to explore the vulnerabilities in the codes, it went rogue. The AI went into the databases or accessing some of the external companies' code and figured out vulnerabilities. It's a very scary thought. And that's where organizations said that, okay, risk and regulatory is not just what the government asked for me to do. It's about ensuring that I'm having very secure data systems, access rights, and how I'm ensuring that the organization is not at risk because I do not have control. And some of these language models have become so much smarter that they can infiltrate your solutions. So how do I do that? Many organizations have also come up, particularly, and interesting for the government, many of the government utility companies have said that I want to use on-prem models. I'm happy to have X number of GPUs, but create a small language model and put it in my infrastructure rather than having it on internet. The government is emphasizing, I need India stack. It is not just only from a perspective of bringing, the nation first model, it is also reducing the risk of infiltration of your public utility services into foreign hands. That's the model, the hacking which will happen there itself. And that's why it has become very much critical for organizations to say what kind of, risk and compliance measures they are bringing in. I'm just not going to go through all of that, but few interesting ones. There was employee resistance to change. Everybody thought people will be resistant to change. What came out is that if you are having a clear charter of transition and how you are going to empower them and the change in their work which will happen, you will see that people are going to be welcoming of the change. And this is where the last point, where a lot of organizations are actually investing in upskilling of their organizations to say how they are going to do work very differently. A lot of organizations today, even from a personal productivity standpoint, have been using cloud. Cloud came out with an enterprise version. I'm running at least a dozen programs for enterprises today where they said, for my entire leadership team, which includes BU heads, board members, please run enterprise cloud capability trainings. because I need to understand how I can leverage this tool to run my organization better, have better insights, rather than going back to my IT department and saying, give me a report, something like this, I don't need that. I can do a lot of things on my own itself. So people are upskilling even at the board level itself, and all of these investments will start coming at a lower level as well. So we see a lot of those things happening in the industry right now as we speak. The interesting point, I just wanted to bring the India angle, because a lot of things what we as organizations or the Indian organizations are doing also moves tandem with where the government policies and investments are happening. So if you look at the sovereign AI investments which is happening, a lot of data centers getting set up in India, $200 billion plus investments are happening, and that is very, very essential. You know, government has already procured 38,000 plus GPUs, 20,000 plus getting procured as we speak itself, to ensure that there is compute capacity in India. Mukesh Ambani was sitting on an interview many months back with Jensen, and he said that can India move to an intelligence organization? We get data in the country, we convert that into intelligence and export intelligence. And can we be the country around doing that? And that's where some of these investments in the processing capacity is happening. If you look at the geopolitical infrastructure, the GCCs market which we have been hearing about, you name a large organization, it has a big setup in India. And many of these GCCs are also, there are some 500 plus AI focused GCCs which are getting a setup out here. They are going to be the powerhouses for driving some of these initiatives, be headquartered in US to Europe to Middle East or to Asia Pacific regions as well. The policy and regulation which I talked about, I think so, the Bharat Cloud which is happening, the AI getting embedded into the Viksit Bharat approach is another initiative which is there. So a lot of policy making is happening, and the localized foundation model, some of us we were talking about is that Sarvam AI and 20 companies got identified. Yani was another one, and they said, okay, let's infuse money in them. The government is going to bring in support to ensure that we have alternative models out there. And all this is happening, which is, I don't know where it is going to settle, but obviously there is a lot of government support. We're talking internally again to say that today government and bureaucrats are spending so much time understanding of these technologies. I did some analysis to say there were 200 visits which happened in our experience center lab. How many of those visits were of government officials? More than 10%. They were government officials from different departments. The Skill India campaign coming to our lab to say, okay, how do I skill the country at large? I've got 1.4 billion population. The traditional way of imparting education cannot upskill this country, period. You have to think out of the box. If you think just by filling up classrooms out here with handful of teachers, we can educate such a vast population, not possible. Innovative thinking is required. Everybody to say that how do we leverage this infrastructure? So it's not what is happening. You're seeing industry evolved. We are also seeing the government being very involved. We are also seeing educational institutions doing a lot of collaboration to bring that forward. So just to end on that, a very, very timely conversation on this. I wish you all the very best, people who are starting off their career and people who are already in the middle of it. Very exciting times for us to see how we can make a larger impact in the ecosystem in which you operate. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, sir, for sharing insightful overview about how AI is reshaping the world. So may I now request our director, sir, to felicitate Sumit, sir. Thank you, director, sir. Thank you, sir, director, sir, and Sumit, sir. So moving on to our second session, I am pleased to introduce our next speaker. Professor Devjit Roy is a professor in the Operations and Decision Science area at IIM Ahmedabad and co-chair of its Center for Transportation and Logistics. He holds a PhD in Industrial and Systems Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and is also a visiting professor at the Rotterdam School of Management and the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan. His research on logistics and survey system has earned him numerous honors, including 2026 FORM's Vikham Skinner Teaching Innovation Award, the Inform's Innovative Applications in Analytics Award, and multiple IIM Ahmedabad Outstanding Research Award. May I now invite Professor Devjit Roy to take the stage on applications of AI in logistics and supply chain management.
Thank you so much, IIM Mumbai, to get me this afternoon, and thank you so much, Professor David Simchi-Levi and our director, Professor Tiwari, to get me to talk about AI. And what you've heard so far is what Mr. Smith said. It's only set the context of AI in terms of software. What I'm going to talk here is more about the physical AI, right? If we talk in general about AI, I think what we know today is that AIs are at the center of the supply chains. Broadly, what I'm going to talk, if you think about supply chain, what does it consist of? Broadly, if you think about it, downstream you have the logistics systems, upstream you have the automation layers, you have the procurement systems, you have the transaction billing, you have industry 4.0, 5.0 technology. But if you ask about it, what is at the center of the supply chains? Any answer? Center of the supply chains. Logistics? Well, wherever you go, broadly the center of the supply chain is our humans, right? Human is the center of the supply chain. And what I'm going to talk today is how can AI help improve worker well-being in the supply chains, right? And to demonstrate that, we'll take two particular contexts. I'm going to talk about the larger context and motivation. Then we're going to pick up a research problem from warehousing context, specifically how humans and robots collaborate and improve the performance. And then we're going to take a problem from the manufacturing context, which is all about how can we learn human behavior to optimize textile assembly lines. And with that, I will conclude my talk. So let us start off with the first one, which is all about the context from the e-commerce omni-channel order fulfillment distribution centers. So if you think broadly about it, if you think about e-commerce in general, it's quite complex, right? If you think about it, can you guess? The worker in Amazon warehouses walk about 10 to 15 miles in a particular day. That's the amount of work that every person does, every picker does in the warehouse. So if you think about it, how does the order gets fulfilled? Well, first you have the pickers who walk in all the aisles to collect all the products. And once they collect all the items, they walk to the aisle. You can see they carry all these heavy roll cages, extremely hard. Not just that, then they go to the particular location, pick up the products. Once they pick up the products, you can think about it, they have to scan it. And once they scan the products, it goes to a conveyor belt towards the packaging. Once it goes to our packaging, finally it goes from here, the packaging is done, and finally it's ready to be shipped out. So you can imagine the whole context when you see, you get these packages behind the scenes, there's a lot of intense effort put by the human beings, intense. It's a huge physical work, right? So Amazon was all about how can we make the people's life better. So if you think about Amazon acquired a company called Kiva Systems, which helps to, instead of the picker going to the product, what does the product comes to the picker? So broadly in this context, what Amazon did is, you can see some of the tales of struggle aspirations. You can read it for yourself. I'll read out a few quotes for you. For example, here we're talking about India, and look at some of the tales of struggle and aspirations. Here we say that in Amazon's India warehouse in Manesar, Nisha found herself immersed in one of the most demanding and physically taxing roles in the facility. The job required her to locate and retrieve specific packages from various stacks at the warehouse, which meant tirelessly being on her feet, continuously walking for 9 hours. It's almost like traveling 25 to 30 kilometers per day. That's insane, right? If you go further, it doesn't stop over here. Look at this quote from Priyanka where she says that she typically has to move or store 150 items an hour for 10 hours a day under pain of being sacked if she slacks. As some of the items are very heavy, your work is not only back-breaking, but it's also exhausting. Look at the insane amount of work every picker puts while you get your products at your doorstep. Right? The behind the scenes is significant effort. So what many of the Amazon and many big players are doing is that instead of making the pickers put the intense effort, why don't the robots just part of the work? So you can see here, we are talking about moving like large, heavy roll cages, which is quite back-breaking. Instead of that, what we have today is something called collaborative picking systems, right? What is collaborating here? On one side, you have the robots, which are doing very high throughput, but requires too many robots. Special racking structure could become very, very expensive. On the other hand, you have the manual systems, which are low throughput, but gives a lot of flexibility. Ask yourself, what are the robots really good at? I'm sure you're thinking about it. Robots are really good at doing mundane tasks. What are the pickers really good at? They're good at doing intelligent tasks. They know exactly how to hold a grip a particular slide changer. They will not crush it. A robot could potentially crush it, right? So what we're saying is that let the mundane tasks be done by the robots and let the intelligent tasks be done by the pickers. So broadly what we're saying is that let robots and humans collaborate with each other, right? That's what we're getting here. And with the collaborative systems, new questions comes into the picture. You can see here, these are robots and humans, they're collaborating and doing the work. Engineers out here, this is the top view of any kind of warehousing systems. You can imagine there's a lot of work that robots and humans are collaborating. You can see this small, these are all the robots and those are my pickers. So we move further from here. This company called Locus Robotics, again based out of Boston, they actually started off this particular company where humans and robots start collaborating. I'll show you a little video about how these things happen. You can see here, this is the warehouse of Locus Robotics. So Locus developed this AMRs, and you can see here, the pickers, all they do is that they pick up the product and put it on the robot. Robots are intelligent. They know exactly where to go, what to do. The pickers just look at the tablet, figure out the right product, and put it out there. What do you think advantage is here? Pickers don't have to walk so much anymore. Robots are doing all the work, pickers are just helping the robots to do the work. That's what I call about collaboration between AI, physical AI and humans. But the job is not done yet because we have to figure out how to make our people's life even better. For that, we did a lot of work understanding how do you do better matching policies between robots and humans. So on one side, the larger question we asked was that how can humans and robots collaborate to maximize throughput, reduce, more importantly, picker walking time with better human-robot matching policies. So you can see here there are broadly two classes of collaborating systems. This is called a system-directed. You can imagine this is the picker. These green dots, what you see, green rectangles, are where the pickers have to go and pick up the products. So you can see here, picker and the robot, they first go, they match, they go to the first location, then they go to the second location, they go to the third location, they next go to the next one, then they go to the next location, and finally, once all the picks are done, the robot goes to the point to unload the whole tote. This is called the system directive, where robots and humans are present for the whole transaction. We asked ourselves, can we do better? To do better, there are other policies like song policies here, where you can see here robots and humans come to do the matching. But after picking, the picker is free to help another robot. This further improves the productivity of the pickers because they travel even less. So you can see here the robots and pickers have been matched every time. Why do we like it? Because it improves the distribution of the pickers on the whole floor of the warehouse, and it further improves the productivity and reduces the travel times. So if we compare the two strategies, SOM is all about multiple matching. You wait for the robot and the picker, travel happens, the pick happens, again the robot waits for another picker, travel and pick, travel and pick. So you can notice here SOM is all about multiple waits. On the other hand, system directed, you have a large wait at the beginning, but once the match happens, all the travel, pick, travel, pick, travel, pick. So the larger question is that which is better? One large triangle or multiple small triangles? That is the question we are asking. So broadly here, we have a very interesting kind of model to answer this question. So we ask, which of the two strategies, system directed or SOM, affects the travel time, which affects the wait time and the throughput? And these are some of the moderators, like the storage policy, the layout, the number of picker to robot ratio, the speed ratios. We combine all of this and put into a nice model to capture the distribution of pickers and robots in the whole pick area. We do all the hard work. We look at all the time components to match both the picker and the robot. Then we look at the picker travel time, additional wait time for the robot if necessary, and the pick times. Without going into too much of the details of the model, you can see here we have multiple synchronizations between pickers and robots, travel time, pick, again a synchronization, travel, pick, another synchronization, travel, pick. So based on this, we developed a building block for this whole system and came up with a very interesting model which looks very simple. All you have is a match between picker and the robot, and we have multiple loops till all the items are picked, and finally robot goes to deliver the toad at the pickering point. That was our model. Very fundamental. The best part of the model, we get distributions. We get, see, if you think about it, if I ask you to go and swim in the river, and I say the average height is 3 feet, would you go and swim? Average only 3 feet. You never do that. Why? At some points, maybe it is 7 feet. What it tells you that in logistics, averages don't really tell the story. Distributions matter. The long tails matter. And here, particularly, we get the distribution. So based on this, we have a very nice model, and based on the model, we come up with very interesting results to find out at what portions can you get system directed, what portions do you get SOM policies. You can see here, the circle indicates the SOM is better, and the rectangles indicate the system directed is better. But broadly, what we see in all of the cases is the SOM policies is a dominant policy. It gives you better travel times, higher productivity, and lower fatigue levels for the people. Are we done yet? The story is not yet. Why? Because still, one thing is missing from the whole picture. Can we make the human lives even better? So next part what we did is that while the first part we published in Transportation Science, the second part, this is called the Picking the Best Bot, collaboration strategies between humans and bots. In the second part of the story, we're looking at what happens when the picker preferences are counted. What are picker preferences? Ask yourself, would you like to travel a lot? So this is one of the surveys that we did here. You can see here, what are the preferences picker are saying? Do they like to pick from the lower level, middle level, or higher level? What is picking levels? Do they like to pick lighter weights, heavier weights, or very heavy weights? Would they like to pick small products, medium products, larger products? These are called the choices. Can we incorporate the choice of the humans into our decision making? And who can help us? AI can help that, right? We can leverage AI to understand the human choices and bake that into the decision making. That's what we're headed towards, right? So broadly here, you can see the option that was given to a lot of survey people, and they told whether they like to pick on the lower level, middle level, or the higher level. So based on this, you can see here the preferences. Some most of them like to have it short, some medium, some very long. Likewise, you can see the preferences for item weight. Looks like lower is better. This is very interesting. Item volume, slightly medium is better. People don't like very small or very large. Medium is better. Likewise, the talk about storage level. What is very interesting, people don't like to bend so much. They don't like to stretch as well. Medium is better. These are the choices every unique, all of you have heterogeneous choices. How can you leverage your choice into the decision making, right? I will show you a simple result. We have a frontier over here, which is the parallel frontier. What we tell you that you may increase your make expense slightly, but you can significantly enhance the bigger's preference. You lose a little bit of make span, a little bit of delays, but a significant benefit to my humans. That's all what I'm pressing for. How will we consider taking decisions while having human at the core? Okay, because all of these, what we're saying is that we can enhance capacity using agentic AI. We can take better decisions. What about the humans? Right? How to make the physical effort even better? Likewise, the second context is from a textile manufacturing. If you talk about any of the larger companies, for example, you have a company like Shai Exports and all, who makes the products for Zara, H&M, Mango, Pantaloons, all of them is done over there in Faridabad plant. If you go and ask them, what is the biggest challenge these companies face? Can you guess? The biggest challenge? Any guesses? Every week, you're changing your product. I just get better at one design, the design changes. The variety is super high. Right? So how do you incorporate large variety, large design sets with the same people? Right? So that's the biggest challenge of this particular company. Typically, these are done using assembly lines. I'm sure if you've done the core OM course, how many have done the core OM course here? Operation management course, some of you have done. I'm sure you have studied the assembly line balance. That's part of it, right? In assembly line balancing, what we teach is always static line balance. What is assembly line balancing? How can you increase the throughput? How do you do it? How do you balance the lines to expand your throughput? What do you think is the problem here? Static line balancing is static. Ask yourself how active you are at 9 a.m. in the morning. How active you are at 9:30. How active you are at 10 a.m., 12 a.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m. Your fatigue level changes. Which means if I go for the static, I may not get what I'm really designing it for. So how do you incorporate human choices into my line balancing? Again, we're talking about AI over here. Can AI learn the human preferences? Can AI learn the fatigue levels of my workers? If I incorporate that into the design, I get much better throughput, right? So here what we're talking about is that a quick question versus a nuanced question. What are the quick questions? How can I enhance throughput? What are nuanced questions? How does fatigue level affect workers' productivity? If you're very active at 9 a.m., where should I locate you? If you're very active at 4 p.m., where should I keep you? These are all dynamic choices. You cannot have a static anymore. So what we are using here is that there's a company who used computer vision to understand human behavior. They monitor the hand movements of the people to really understand. If you took at the computer vision, what this company did is that you monitor the movements of the hand and you figure out something called the cycle times. Right? From the technology of computer vision, you figure out what is cycle time of every operator at different times in the day. It's no longer static, you're talking about dynamic now. But once you have the cycle times, the nuanced questions is all about, can we learn their customer behavior? Can we learn the employee behavior? If you learn the employee behavior, you can optimize for better throughput capacity. So both of the context has a common thread. It's all about human at the center. Human is at the core of supply chains. Can we use AI to to learn human behavior? Can I use AI to optimize and improve my worker well-being? At the end, that is all AI for social good, right? So to summarize all of this, all we are saying is that while we consider any supply chains, any logistics, industry, transactions, human is at the core. So how do we really use physical AI, robots on one side, but AI ML algorithms should help improve worker well-being in supply chains? To conclude, all about rethink existing processes. But more importantly, new technologies such as physical AI and Industry 4.0 tech to identify new data sources. Once you have new data sources, use that AI ML on the data sources to learn human choices and preferences. Once you learn human choices, you can optimize the system for considering dynamic human behavior. Yeah? So thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Thank you, Prof. David. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So may I now request Director, sir, to facilitate gathering, sir. Thank you, sir, for sharing your insightful experience. So, and now the moment all of us have been looking forward to, it is my privilege to introduce and welcome our keynote speaker, Professor David Simchi-Levi. Professor David Simchi-Levi is the director of the MIT Data Science Lab, which he founded and led for over a decade as the William Barton Rogers Professor at MIT. He is a distinguished professor at Purdue University. He is widely regarded as one of the world's foremost authorities on supply chain risk and resilience. He served as editor-in-chief of Management Science from 2018 to 2023 and earlier led flagship journals like Operations Research and Naval Research Logistics. In 2023, he was elected of the National Academy of Engineering, and in 2020, he received the Informs Impact Prize for his pioneering work on identifying and mitigating risk in global supply chains. He is a fellow of Informs and a distinguished fellow of the Manufacturing and Service Operations Management Society, and has also received the Ford Motor Company Engineering Excellence Award and the Informs Cookman Prize among the other honors. He is the author of the widely used textbook Designing and Managing the Supply Chain. He is the founder of Logic Tools, OPS Rules and Opalitics, companies later acquired by IBM and Accenture. Professor David brings decades of experience advising Fortune 500 companies including Ford, Boeing and GE. So before the keynote address, I would like to request Director Sir to share a few words about David Sir.
Professor David, deans, my faculty colleagues, and dear students. We are lucky that Professor David has accepted our invitation to come to the campus and participate in the workshop which is being done here also, as well as one of our alumni, Mr. Diwakar Singhal, who has initiated very good collaborations with us and the impact. And accordingly, we received a lot of grant from them for several projects that we are doing since last 2-3 years. And under that project, actually, we have instituted some faculty chairs also along with the provision of the workshop. And under that category, this is being organized. And we all are fond of Professor David because his, persona and as well as reputation helped us a lot since 2020 when we first started a seminar and course with him. And you are not a student of that time because situation was very different. It was needy, and then there was a lot of problems we were facing to upgrade our position as well as make better presence in the industry. So when Professor David started, his programs initially were attended by more than 2,000, 2,500, and once upon a time 3,000 people joined that program, and most of them were very senior executives of the company. And after that, then our fate started changing, and our investment scenario became more vibrant, more dynamic, and then newer companies started coming up because his reputation in the industry, particularly multinationals, very far and wide, and that way we got a lot of benefit. Coming to his credentials, this is has described, but I have to say a few more things about it. Right from his days to the MIT and currently, all the recent topics which are both groomed in the theory and most practical kind of topics and work he used to do. Some of the very popular work which has, created history in the literature of supply chain management. Basically, his stress test that is applied for supply chain, particularly during the pandemic period as well as the stress period. And those kind of work where the concept of time to recovery and time to supply has came into picture, and that was the initial work which has later on became the buzzword of the industry. And very recently, he gave an idea how to democratize the optimization process. Basic observation, those who are knowing, OR could not become popular among the common people like economics because of two reasons. That for practicing any OR, you need to do formulation. And formulation is basically mathematical job. And many of the people do not like to involve in those kind of efforts. But with the help of Agentic AI, Generative AI, you have to give English-like statement as a prompt, and then you can get some answer. But a lot of problem comes in the process where you have to see the hallucinated results. So constraint at the guardrail, and then using different kind of agents which are we coding for the formulation checker, and then selecting the proper algorithm for solving the problem and recorrecting those things, and several other measures which have been there in the Agentic technology, which he has promoted, and that is now being order of the society, particularly those who are involved in solving the challenging problems of the day. Recently, we have seen that how the multiple autonomous agents, which can be coordinated quickly to build up a better, reliable supply chain, where he has addressed the bullish effect, and pertaining to that, he improved the resiliency also of the supply chain. So there are many stories and other things like his popular book and books that are on the rules of supply chain logistics, and 6-year continuous editor-in-chief of the management science. Before that, editorial role of the operations research, now research logistics. These are all very innovative things and not possible for anybody to achieve all such fears. So you can say if you want to measure him, then जैसे हम लोग कहते हैं ना कि जब कोई बढ़िया चीज होना होता है तो उसके लक्षण पहले से मालूम पड़ जाते हैं, करेक्ट? जैसे आपको पता होगा कि अगर किसी को आप बोलिए कितना वर्ड आप बोल सकते हो, देयर इज लिमिट ऑफ स्पीकिंग वर्ड. सो यही प्रॉब्लम कई बार कई लोगों के सामने आई. सो वंस दिनकर जी वाज फेसिंग, देन ही से जितना कुछ कहूँ मगर कहने को शेष बहुत रह जाता है, करेक्ट? Whatever you say, many things get remain to be said. So with this note, once again, on behalf of entire IIM fraternity, I offer my very heartfelt welcome to Professor David. Please come.
really a pleasure to be here. As Professor Tiwari said, we have been collaborating since 2020. Multiple classes, thousands of people, but I've never been here. So this is my first time visiting your campus, meeting face-to-face with the faculty. It's really my pleasure. Today, I am going to focus on supply chain and business transformation with AI and large language models. What I will show you here is something very generic, something extremely general. Most of my examples will be in supply chain, but this is way beyond, as you will see, supply chain. But before I start with the technical part of my presentation, let me involve you through two questions. With a show of hands, don't be afraid, just show of hands. How many of you are using technology like ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, or any variation of some of the large language models that exist out there? Show of hands. Everybody. A little bit more difficult question. How many of you believe that in the next 12 to 24 months, we will see the same technology that you are using for recommendation, making and executing business decisions? Show of hands. Some, not a lot. What I am going to show you is that the future is here. That in fact, leading companies are using these type of technologies not only to make a recommendation, but in fact to execute decisions across the enterprise. And of course, as I will highlight here, this comes with important challenges. So I'll talk about what's possible, I'll bring a few case studies, and then I'll talk and highlight some of the challenges faced by industry. But let me start by focusing on some of the challenges that industry, whether it's in India, whether it's outside India, whether challenges that industry is facing. The first is what we have seen over the last 18 months. Global geopolitical instability and trade uncertainty, right? Affecting how companies make decisions because they face a lot of risk in their business. Significant labor shortage. This started at the beginning of the pandemic with people departing the labor market. As a result, companies need to do the same with fewer people, or sometimes do more with fewer people in their business. Significant increase in the cost of energy, the cost of transportation, the cost of material. Just look at oil price today. It's almost $100 per barrel. A few months back, it was in the $60, $70 per barrel. All of this, of course, affect companies' focus on supply chain cost and supply chain efficiency. Lack of upstream visibilities. Most retailers, for example, will have good understanding of who are their tier 1 suppliers, the suppliers they acquire product from. But they typically don't know who are the suppliers, what we call tier 2. They will not know who are tier 3 suppliers. As a result, if something happened in tier 3 or tier 4, for example, in something, if you're a car manufacturer, an OEM manufacturing in the automotive industry, your semiconductor chip manufacturer is a tier 4 or tier 5. If tier 4 or tier 5 supplier is disrupted, the manufacturer, the retailer will know about this 3-4 months after the disruption. At the time they hear about it, it's too late to respond to the disruption. As a result, all of this requires companies to focus on efficiency, to deal with the rising cost, to focus on resiliency, to make sure that they can address trade uncertainties, disruption anywhere in the business, geopolitical instabilities, and to focus on productivity so that they can do more with fewer people. The problem is these are conflicting objectives, and the intuition is very simple. If you focus on supply chain resiliency, you typically invest in inventory, you build redundancy, but these do not come free. And as a result, conflict with our focus on supply chain and cost efficiency. One way to address these conflicting challenges is by combining data, analytics, and automation. But of course, the landscape of analytics is huge. Let me just talk a little bit about the landscape of analytics by introducing this very intuitive framework. In this framework, I'm focusing on two dimensions. The x-coordinate is complexity, how easy or difficult it is to do the analysis. And the y-coordinate focus on value to the organization, return on investment, customer experience, value loosely defined, whatever the company is focusing on in its business. And in this framework, I have 5 levels. The lowest level, descriptive, is use data and analysis to answer a very simple question. Just tell me what happened. Nothing is new here. Companies have used this for many, many years. A little bit more sophisticated is diagnostic. Don't only tell me what happened, but also try to explain why did it happen. Nothing is new here. This has been used for many years. What I'm going to do is to focus on the top 3. Predictive, use AI and machine learning to understand consumer behavior, to predict supply performance, lead time, quality, throughput. If I can predict well, then in prescriptive, I want to use a prediction in order to optimize decisions. Where to position inventory, how much inventory to position, what should be the price for a specific product, when to give a discount, and so forth and so on. This is all about using optimization to make business decisions. And if I give you this presentation 2-3 years ago, that's where the framework would stop. However, over the last 2 years, we added another level, the level of generative, where we use large language models to automate decisions. And this is very surprising. Why? Because large language models is a technology that was designed, was developed to generate text that has the look and feel of text generated by humans. I'm going to show you here how we use the same technology that we all use for automation, to automate decision making. And so my presentation is going to focus on the top 3, predictive, which is all AI and machine learning, prescriptive, mostly optimization technology for making best decision, and generative for automation. In fact, I'm going to focus on these 3 levels to achieve 3 complementary objectives. The first one will be using predictive and prescriptive to transform processes. Look at the business processes that company is using and try to improve them, or try to introduce new processes that allow us to improve business performance. If we can do that, then I want to build on top of that automation, where the machine is executing decisions. And if I can do that, if I can drive automation, then I want to go to the 3rd layer, which is enabling autonomy. And you notice that I'm distinguishing here between automation and autonomy. In automation, in my definition, in automation, we humans tell the machine what the policy is, what the rules are, and the machine is executing, is following our policy and our rules. Autonomy is different. In autonomy, the machine is learning on the fly about the environment, what we call the context, and once it learns about the environment, it identifies what policy to use, what rules to follow. And when the environment is changing, the machine is recognizing the environment is changing, and as a result, it's changing its policy. It's all done by the machine without human telling the machine what the policy is. So think about what I'm describing here as peeling an onion. The first layer of the onion is transforming processes. Just use AI and machine learning to identify how to improve existing, how to introduce new processes to the organization. Once we did that, then we can move to the second layer of the onion, which is all about driving automation. And if we can drive automation, then we can move to the third layer of the onion, which is all about autonomy. And in my experience, you cannot jump the level. You need to do it one by one in order to be able to take advantage of all of these capabilities. So this is what I will talk about in this discussion. I will start by peeling the first level of the onion, transforming processes. Once we understand that, then I'll move a little bit a deeper level by peeling the second and then the third level. So following my story, I'm going to start with transforming processes with predictive and prescriptive analytics. A little bit of background. Somebody talked about fashion retailing. I started working on supply chain digitization in 2016, 2017. My first project was with a very large fashion retailer, Uniqlo. My team basically, in a period of about 18 months, used AI and machine learning together with optimization to transform the entire supply chain of the company. As we did that, we got opportunities to move from fashion retailing to a large CPG, where we again focused on digitization, supply chain digitization by using AI, machine learning, and optimization to transform the CPG supply chain. From there, we moved to an industrial manufacturer. From industrial manufacturer, we moved to a high-tech company. As we did this and worked with companies in different industries, we realized that despite the fact that these companies come from different industries, facing different challenges, different requirements, there are 4 capabilities that are critical when you digitize the business, when you digitize supply chain. The first one, on the left-hand side, is replacing consensus forecast. What is consensus forecast? Consensus forecast is something that is used by companies across industries and across geographies. Consensus forecast is a simple process where different functional areas will generate their own forecast. Finance has a forecast, supply chain has a forecast, sales has a forecast, trade, people who are focusing on pricing, discounting, marketing, they generate their own forecast. And then the different functional areas, each of which has its own forecast, they come together in a consensus meeting to agree on a compromise. Not clear that this compromise correctly represents market demand. In unified view of demand, we replace this process with a process where we agree on the data. Then we let the machine generate a single forecast that is used by different functional area and different level of granularity. Supply chain is using the forecast and skew weak level combination. In the case of the CPG, the consumer packaged good manufacturing company, they generate a forecast and a skew weak level combination for the next 80 weeks. Finance is not interested in skew weak level combination, so we use bottom up to aggregate all skew within a business unit, all week within a month to generate a financial forecast for the next 12 months for the specific business unit. The second capability is supply chain segmentation. This function is replacing one-size-fits-all strategy where the company is using same strategy across all product, market, and channel. In supply chain segmentation, we recognize that the supply chain strategy that the company needs to use for high volume, low volatility product should be different than the supply chain strategy that the company should use for low volume, high volatility product. And of course, there are products with other characteristics. As a result, we need to use AI and machine learning to segment product, market, and channels. Each segment has its own supply chain strategy, and then we build synergies across the segment to benefit from economies of scale and to reduce complexity. If we can do that, then the third capability takes advantage of unified view of demand, takes advantage of supply chain segmentation, and generate a closed loop, SNOP, a closed loop planning process that brings supply chain, finance, trade people to pricing, so to agree on a single plan. Of course, as effective as the plan is, there are deviations from the plan, supply disruption, changes in demand. In smart execution, our objective is to identify the deviations, the changes, the disruption, and respond to them effectively. If you think about what I described here, it's all about predictive and prescriptive. There is nothing focusing on large language models, right? Because when we started this transformation, there was no large language model capability available. This is built on a data platform that allows companies to aggregate data, to visualize the data, to normalize data. It's built on a resilient supply network, on a resilient supply chain, and it typically leads to an end-to-end business and supply chain strategy. All of these functions and case studies are described in my Harvard Business Review article that was published about 2.5 years ago. Since then, we have not changed these capabilities. What we did over the last 2.5 years was to add another layer, the layer of generative to automate processes. So you may ask, what is the level of generative that allow you to automate processes? I'm going to describe it in the next couple of slides. But before I jump into explaining how LLM and generative AI allow us to automate processes and give you example where it was implemented and what is the impact, I want to show you this is not academic. This is academic plus significant business impact. Let me show you just the value of this type of capabilities. And I'm going to talk about value by distinguishing by two levels of implementation. One without generative and one with generative. So let's start focusing on what is the value to the organization before generative was implemented, just the four capabilities that I described. An intuitive way to understand what we are doing is to look at the figure on the left-hand side. Remember, companies have many KPI, many performance measures, and these performance measures typically confirm conflict with each other. And so here I'm focusing on two: responsiveness on the X coordinate and efficiency on the Y. Efficiency is all about cost. Responsiveness is about how long it takes us to respond to a customer's order. And the solid line that you see here represents the trade-off between the two, and the trade-off is very intuitive. When we emphasize short response time, typically cost is high. Why? Because if you emphasize short response time, you need to build a lot of inventory close to market demand. Cost as a result is very high. On the other hand, when you emphasize low cost, we need to centralize inventory or even not build inventory by producing to order. This typically allows us to reduce cost. However, response time is much longer, and the point A along this trade-off represents the company strategy. And typically when executives meet and discuss changing their strategy, what they mean is moving along the current trade-off curve. If I move to the left, it means that I reduce response time. That's good, but cost goes up. If I move to the right, it means that I cut costs, but it takes longer to respond to a customer order. What we do with the four capabilities that I show you, using AI, predictive, and prescriptive, we push the trade-off curve in a direction of improvement. Because if I can do that, then, as you can see, for the same response time, I cut costs by moving from A to C. Or similarly, for the same cost, I can cut response time by moving from A to B. And there are a lot of strategies between B and C where I can do better than A. So this is a very intuitive way to describe what we are doing. But when I look at the data provided a much more powerful story. When I look at the capabilities implemented, remember the four capabilities implemented in multiple industries, we saw significant improvement in forecast accuracy because of the ability to focus on unified view of demand. This improvement allows us to significantly increase customer service, which implies better customer experience. It allows us to increase revenue through the reduction in lost sales, and it allows us to dramatically cut inventory cost and waste for the organization. You notice this has nothing to do with Gen AI. When we put generative AI on top of these four processes, the same benefit exists. But then we see dramatic improvement in productivity. The typical numbers that we have seen, and I'll show you the case study, is 20 to 40% increase in planner productivity. Think about this as first order effect of generative AI. The second order effect of generative AI is that we saw a few months after the implementation, the increase in productivity is immediate. The second order is that these numbers that you see on top started improving. Why? Because now the planners can analyze many more scenarios. They can look at issues that they have never looked before because they have more time. As a result, we see improvement in the numbers at the point. Now you may ask, you are talking about using Gen AI, large language models, to automate process. How does this work? And this is nicely illustrated in the figure on that you see here. On the left, I show you the reality, right? Before Gen AI. What you see here is a planner, the business unit, interacting with the data that the company has and the technology that the company is using. The technology may be O9, SAP, Oracle, if you're familiar, Canaxis, Blue Yonder. But from time to time, the planners have questions. For example, the planner is using the technology to generate a forecast. The planner send it to finance, send it to sales. They get immediately a question, hey, I don't understand, the forecast is too high, or the forecast is too low. If I can't explain it, nobody will use it. Or they send the forecast to finance, and finance come back, hey, you're giving me a forecast today for December, but this forecast you gave me today for December is different than what you gave me last month. I cannot explain the change, nobody is going to follow. Or the technology is recommending a replenishment strategy or a pricing strategy, and it contradicts the intuition of the planner. The planner is not going to follow. So the planner now, facing with these challenges, has two options. Option one is to call the data scientist, to call the data engineer, to call the software vendor, say, hey, I don't understand what's going on, help me understand. Or, and this, the or, happens in 95% of the IFC, the planner is saying, you know what, ignore the recommendation of the technology, and they manually change everything. We did a project like that for a very large industrial manufacturer. Almost 100% of the forecast were manually changed because planner never trusted the output from the technology. So what we did was to, before I tell you what we did, just what it means is that this typically implies a long planning process, low trust, poor adoption, manual processes. So what we did was to replace data scientists, data engineers by a large language model. Large language model can translate. They can translate from Hindu to English and back from English to Hindu. If we know what we are doing, we can train the technology to translate from the language of the planner to the language of the technology. For example, the planner is asking, hey, I don't understand, why are we using supplier A to satisfy the demand for product B? LLM knows, because of the training, that under the hood, the technology that the company is using to make replenishments is an optimization model. And so it takes this question and says to the optimization, hey, tell me what happened if I do not allow supplier A to satisfy the demand for product B. Well, technically, it means if the flow from A to B is zero. It's the same technology. We haven't changed anything. Technology is running with the added constraint. It says, hey, in this case, your cost will be $27.60. Large language model knows that the cost was much lower when we allow supplier A to satisfy the demand for product B. The technology LLM send a message to the planner, hey, if supplier A is not used to satisfy the demand for product B, your cost is higher by 11%. What we found, and I'll show you 4 case studies, this brings much faster and data-driven decision-making. It provides insight to the planners, and it dramatically increases productivity. And I can report here a few case studies. The first one, case study number 1, that somebody mentioned, one of the speakers mentioned data center. This is our collaboration with Microsoft Cloud Supply Chain. We all use cloud services. The infrastructure that support this type of services is very massive. Microsoft has about 500 data centers. Each data center has thousands of servers. What we did, we use this technology to help supply chain executives make demand forecasting, make replenishment strategies of what equipment to buy and how to position inventory in their supply chain. The company reported that this reduces response time from weeks and days to hours and minutes. Think about what I'm describing. Reduce response time from weeks and days to hours and minutes. And they reported 20 to 30% saving in planner time. There are two papers on this case study that we wrote. One of them is from the perspective of the Plenary, what the Plenary are saying about the impact of the technology on the world. The second example is the European fashion retailer. This is a very large online fashion retailing in Europe. The technology that I'm describing, the technology that we developed, is used to generate a forecast, optimize price, and completely automate the pricing process for 1.5 million styles. This is about 6 million SKUs, sold in 23 different European countries. And the price that you will see if you buy a product today in Spain may be different than the price that you will see today if you buy the same product in Germany, because our system is learning on the fly about consumer behavior and consumer demand. And this is completely automated. The third one is an automotive manufacturing company focusing on procurement. This automotive manufacturing company has about 6,000 tier 1 suppliers. With each supplier, the company has multiple contracts. Each contract is hundreds of pages. Nobody can be on top of the contract, but LLM can. Today, when a procurement director is generating an order, the order goes to the LLM. For example, the order is for 5,000 pounds that the company wants to purchase from a specific supplier based on the contract. This purchase order goes to the LLM. LLM may say, hey, I read the contract. The contract has incentive that if you order another 200 pounds, there is a significant discount embedded in the contract. Taking into account the cost of inventory, it's better for you to add 200 units to the order. The automotive manufacturing company reported millions of dollars. Think about the numbers, millions of dollars in procurement saving. And the last one is a brick and mortar retailer in Latin America, where we use these types of technology for both pricing and inventory replenishment at the store. So now, let's pause for a second. I showed you two layers of the onion. The first one is transforming processes, and the second one was driving automation. Now, I want to talk a little bit about autonomous. And the reason I started focusing on autonomous over the last 18 months is because lots of experts suggest that fully autonomous supply chain, where AI makes all the decision, is just around the corner. I want to know how close we are. And the reason I'm asking this question is, let me compare it to autonomous driving. Some of you may remember, but in 2015, there was a famous guy, 2015, in the US, who said autonomous driving is just around the corner. In fact, he said, will be within 2 years. We are still waiting for autonomous driving. So I'm asking, is it around the corner, or we need to wait many years? So what we did was to develop a test bed that allowed people to configure the supply chain. What is the demand? What is the lead time? What is the role of different facilities? What is the cost in the supply chain? And embedded in our test bed, if you go to my data science lab at MIT or my center at Purdue, you have access to the test bed. And the test bed allows you to choose what technology you like. And my American colleagues will not be very happy with some of the results, and I'll explain in a second. It allows you to decide, I want to use ChatGPT, or I want to use Llama, or I like the Chinese and I want to use DeepSeek, or how many of you are familiar with Query? Show of hands. From which company? Which company introduced Query? Alibaba. So you can decide what LLM to use. And then the beauty of this test, I can compare performance to performance of people. Does this make sense? And so So this is what I did. Some of the results are described in this Harvard Business Review article that was published December of last year. That's the first paper. We have a follow-up paper that is on SSRN, if you're familiar with this, that you can look at. And let's see what kind of insight we can get. And when I say what kind of insight, I'm focusing on two different questions. First, can I compare different technologies, right? And second, can I compare different technologies with humans? Does this make sense? So first, internal comparison between technology, because the reason I'm very curious about this, at least in the US, the assumption is all these large language models are the same because they're all using transformers. So if they're all the same, who cares? Okay. So a little bit about the history of large language model, just to give you an insight. The first generation of the technology was released in the summer of 2024. These are called non-reasoning models. The second generation was released in the summer of 2025. Different companies, different time. Some in July, some in August, but summer of 2025. These are called reasoning models. So I'm interested in the difference between non-reasoning and reasoning, and within reasoning, the difference between different technologies. So here is the first cut of our result. What we did was to let human manage the test bed, right? The test bed, just at a high level, the test bed has 4 facilities. So I need 4 managers, one for each facility. If I have 30 groups, I need 120 people. That's what I have. We tried it with MBA students, we tried it with undergrad, we tried it with executive. There's no difference between the performance of different groups. More or less always the same. And what I did, I calculated the total supply chain cost, and I normalized it of human, total supply chain cost of human. I calculated for each one of the group, I calculated the average, right? Some did very well, some did worse, some did medium. So I calculated the average of the cost of the 30 group, and I normalized supply chain cost based on human average. Does this make sense? So human average was 100. Look at non-reasoning models. Turns out, non-reasoning models, the first generation, are not effective. Their cost, when you let them manage the supply chain, is more than twice higher than the average cost of humans. So this is not competitive. However, I ask, stay with non-reasoning, right? And add a level that we call orchestrator. People in industry will know what I mean. What is an orchestrator? An orchestrator is an agent, a large language model, who does not make any supply chain decisions. The orchestrator only decides when and what information to share across the different facilities. Does this make sense? It makes 0 supply chain decision. You can see that non-reasoning with orchestrator already beat human by about 30%. How about reasoning model? The second generation of large language model that was released last summer. You can see 0 training. Out of the box technology already beat human by about 30%. 0 training, 0 orchestrator, just giving the prompt and letting the machine learn and then make decision, already beating human significance. So you say, okay, but there are lots of reasoning models. Tell me what you can say about the reasoning models that we use. You can see it here. So now I'm focusing on human versus reasoning models. And the reasoning models that I'm focusing on are of 2 types. The blue is GPT-5, and the orange is Llama 4.0. And and you can see cost normalized for human to be 100. You can see reasoning models. This is what I showed you in the previous slide. Beats human by about 30%. However, reasoning model with an orchestrator cut cost by 50%. Think about it. 50% reduction in cost relative to the average cost of human. That's an enormous impact on supply chain performance. Now, recently, we started adding, and if you go to the tool, you can use it yourself, adding Qwen and DeepSeek. DeepSeek is not competitive. So the Chinese DeepSeek cannot compete with the Western large language. However, Qwen from Alibaba beats significantly the GPT-5 and Llama 4.0 by large margin. And if you look at the new version that we are releasing, you will see significantly better performance for Qwen. Now, I want to add a little bit of a caveat about what I'm describing here. So you can see here, and you tell yourself, this technology, reasoning models, beats human on average, right? But as the previous talk said, average may be misleading, right? I want to know on a day-to-day how the technology is doing. And so I'm going to ask, what happened when the agent managed the supply chain every day? And let me explain what I did so you understand the result and the insight. Remember, when I reported in this slide the performance, I run the LLM, say, Llama 4.0 or GPT 5.0, I run the LLM 30 times. Every time I know the decision by each one of the facilities. I run it for multiple periods, and I report the performance of everyone. So I have now performance across every time period for each facility across the 30 round. Does this make sense? And I want to know across each facility, across every time period, across each one of the run, are decision reliable? Or maybe when I come to the office tomorrow and I use this technology, I have no idea if it's a good day, an average day, or a bad day. So let's see what happens, just to give us an insight. So what happened when the agent managed the supply chain over 30 times? So this slide here give you an insight. And let me explain the slide so that you get to the depths. You see the color on the top right-hand side. Blue represents the retailer who face customer demand. Orange represents the wholesaler. Green represents the distributor. And red represents the factory. So I have 4 facilities. So far, so good, right? I run the test bed for, you see, 25 weeks. But remember, I run the test bed for 25 weeks 30 times. So, for example, I can look at the factory in week 17. In run number 1, see what the decision. In run number 2, see what the decision. All the way to run number 30. So what I'm plotting here, for every week, all the decisions made by each one of the facilities in this supply chain. So every week I am reporting to you in this figure every decision made by every facility across the 30 rounds. So let's take an example. Look at week 25 and look at the green. The green is a distributor, right? The bar represent 50% of the decisions made by the distributor in week number 25. What does this mean? The bottom of the bar is the marker, the point, below of which there are 25% of the order. The top of the green bar, right? It's hard for me to point. The top of the green bar is the point below of which 75% of the order are. So between the top and the bottom, there are 50% of them. Big range. And do you see all the bubbles? The bubble represents the elucidation. Sometimes the order are very high. Sometimes the order are very small. In fact, there is a deeper insight here. If you look at, for example, week 14, look at week 14. This line here represents the retailer bar. Very reliable, very stable, all the time ordering the same thing across the 31. However, if I move from the retailer to the wholesaler, the bar is increasing. As I move from the wholesaler to the distributor, the bar is bigger. If I move from the distributor to the factory, the bar is increasing. This is, if you took a class in supply chain, this is bullwhip, but the bullwhip by agent, not by human. We always talk about human creating bullwhip effect. This is agent creating the bullwhip. But there is an even more important example. Take, for example, the factory, the race. Look at the bars as you go across time. Again, take the factory. Right? This is the red bar. And look at the size of the bar as you go across time. The bar is increasing, meaning as time goes by, the agents are more and more confused, generating more and more unrealistic orders. Sometimes small, sometimes not. When you talk to your computer science friends, they will typically, or data science friends, they will typically tell you, look, when you use AI, the system, the agent is learning over time. This says the agent becomes dumber and dumber over time. So on average, the technology is very good, but on a day-to-day basis, the technology may be hallucinating and you have no idea what type of day you will have when you try to use the technology. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I will finish by saying, okay, we have a reliability problem. Average is good, but it's highly unreliable. And so what we did, we developed two different concepts to increase reliability. One is by using what is called in reinforcement learning, fine-tuning of the parameters. We basically use open source like Queen or like Llama to teach the technology about large language models. And I will just show you here to see. The top one is the highly unreliable figure that I showed you. When we told the agent about supply chain, oh my God, the reliability increasing, right? Increasing dramatically. And in fact, when we check about cost, you can see that teaching the technology about supply chain. Look at what I'm saying. This is technology like human. We need to explain to it about supply chain. You can see human. Now I'm not scaling anything. Now I'm showing you the human cost was about 6,700. And the parenthesis 91 is the coefficient of variation. How much volatility in the decision made by human. You can see GPT 5.0 and Llama 4.0, more or less the same. The average is much better than average of human, but they are quite high, unreliable. In fact, the worst of GPT 5.0 and the worst of Llama is higher than the average of people. Do you see that? Higher than, that's why I'm saying it's highly unreliable. Queen, which was the best technology now, without any training, is, of course, beating everybody else, but it's still highly unreliable. But when we do the training, dramatic improvement in performance, both in terms of average cost and in terms of reliability. So this is one way where we train the technology to be reliable. And the other ways that we train the technology to be reliable is to apply what I call here guardrails. Guardrails does not require training. Guardrail is when we put limits on what the technology can do. The problem with guardrails is it makes the technology more reliable, but it constrains the set of decisions that the technology can choose from. As a result, its cost is not very attractive. So think about what I described. There are two general ways to increase reliability. One, teach the technology about supply chain. That teaching, like what you see in your classroom, is difficult. You need to know what you are doing. It requires significant training of the technology. But if you can do it, that's the best performance. If you cannot do it, the second best alternative is to put guardrail. Guardrail allow us to restrict what the machine is doing. However, it has cost implication. What guardrail to put in place? How much loss you get in the efficiency of your supply chain? These are things that companies need to consider. And so I will stop here just by highlighting, if anybody is interested in this area and in our insight, you can look at the two papers that we just released recently on this. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
We now open the floor for Q&A session with Professor David. Please raise your hand and wait for the mic.
Don't be shy. Comments, questions, suggestions, complaints.
Good evening, sir. My name is Manoj, and my question is that how are you planning? How would one plan on going about deploying agentic AI or generative AI in the supply chain to reduce scope 3 emissions and therefore reducing overall emissions?
So the easiest way for this is to think about transportation. Right? Typically, high emission is associated with ineffective transportation strategy. And so think about adding large language model to manage, to control the transportation system, which allows you therefore to reduce emission. The challenge with emission is that it's very difficult to quantify exactly how much carbon emission you reduce, right? And so instead of focusing on the specific amount of carbon emission that we reduce, I focus on the specific improvement in transportation efficiency because there is high correlation.
Can I have a follow-up question? So, sir, in this slide, the point that you mentioned about lack of tier N visibility, right? How does that link with this? As you mentioned, that it's very hard to track and identify. Can agentic AI, can automation help in understanding your tier 3, tier 4 vendors being responsible?
So that's exactly where AI, machine learning, will begin. Why? So think about automotive manufacturing companies, say Ford, right? Ford has suppliers that brings the assembly facilities component. This supplier gets component from the tier 2 supplier, but they don't know. However, when tier 2 supplier ship to tier 1 supplier a specific component, when it's cross-border, this is reported. And it's reported in public domain. If you know what you are doing, you can decode from this report, hey, this tier 1 supplier is receiving this component from tier 2 supplier, and you connect it to the supply chain. So we see a lot, there are a few companies that are focusing on using AI and machine learning to build the upstream network based on this prediction process.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes. We need folks.
Good evening, sir. My name is Siddharth, and my question is, when multiple competing companies introduce different types of agentic AI systems in the market, so does these systems help in stabilizing these markets globally, or will this create a certain type of bullwhip effect?
So let me try to understand the question. When a company introducing different type of agentic within its own supply chain, I'm not sure I explained
So my question is basically, how would the different agentic AI systems interact with each other? How that, like, dynamically they will interact, and when they interact, will these create a stability in the market, or when they make similar type of decisions, will these create something unpredictable that we will not be able to understand?
So I don't have a full answer to your question. But what we know is there are multiple agentic AI, and they have different capabilities. Remember I showed you big difference between reasoning and non-reasoning. Within reasoning, big difference between Llama, GPT 5.0, and Queen, and DeepSeek. And so you need to know which one to implement for your decision. It's not the case that always Queen is better. Does this make sense? In our test bed, for supply chain decision, Queen was always the best one. But if you do pricing, something else. So you need to select, or companies need to select the agent based on the task at hand. Does this make sense?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Hello, Professor David. Thanks for a very thought-provoking presentation. My name is Nisha Sharma, and I'm a part of the faculty here in sustainability management. My question stems from the philosophical questions around AI. So I've been reading Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity Theory, and he talks about Turing's test and about machines surpassing human level intelligence sooner than we imagine. And you also touched upon it a little bit while talking about automation to autonomy. So what do you think is the future when it comes to machines making decisions like human beings, incorporating aspects of human as well as environmental well-being?
I don't have a complete answer to your question. Whoever has it should report their insight. But what I can tell you about the different layers, remember, transform processes, drive automation, and enable autonomy. Even with autonomy, we see a very important role for humans. And that's clearly the role of managing, supervising, making sure that decisions are consistent with the company policy. It just will allow us to do better decisions. Now, there are clearly environmental issues associated with the use of this type of technology, and the one that comes to mind is data centers, the use of water, and so forth and so on. But we should not ignore the fact that when there are lots of now academic research reporting that when data centers were established in certain region, hiring increase, average salary increase, significant benefit to the specific region coming with this technology. So it's like any decision, you need to implement it in a sensible way. And sensible may mean, okay, don't use this type of energy, but use significantly a more efficient energy to support the data center. There is no general answer to this. There are a lot, especially in the US, I'm not sure about India, there are in certain regions, certain states, significant objection to investing and building data center. New York State just announced 1 year moratorium on any data center, just until they understand better the environmental, but also societal impact. And the objective of the state is not to stop, but the objective of the state is to find a good way to apply this type of thing.
Professor, maybe I just wanted to highlight a few things as a practitioner on the Agentic, what I've seen, some of the models of our organization that adopted. One thing is, they have looked at a model of creating the context graph and knowledge graph to ensure that the learnings of the or the fine-tuning of the LLMs to give a much more accurate answers, remove hallucinations. So in a practical scenario, any organization, enterprise looking at it, this has now become more critical because otherwise the challenges which Professor highlighted is something very, very common now. The other thing which is to question in terms of the guardrails and also on the entire environmental hazard which is coming in, organizations along with the agentic frameworks are creating an observability platform. This observability platform basically also looks at the performance of the LLM, the accuracy of that, and it also brings in the large action models to say that I don't need to call an LLM every time. Do I actually have an API to API call and perform certain things? I may also be having some of the ML models or Python coding which I have to be done that. So it's not blindly applying everything to an LLM to get those models here itself. Because if you look at any organizations today, the entire AI journey started earlier with machine learning. A lot of people were creating predictive models, so I don't have to redo everything itself. So when you look at the observability model itself, organizations are today actually looking at what is their token consumption, how do they rationalize the token consumption is a critical component to optimize the overall cost itself, and also saying that are they looking at the entire, rather than reinventing the wheel, what are the other digital assets which can be leveraged there. So when a practical implementation, at least what I've seen being done by industries, very important points, because if you do not apply those controls around it, you will have an element which you cannot manage forever.
This brings us to the end of our Q&A session. Thank you everybody, and once again, thank you sir for presenting. As we move towards the conclusion, I now invite Professor Susmita Narayana, Chairperson Business Development and one of the faculty coordinators for this event, to deliver the vote of thanks.
It was certainly a very spellbinding evening, if I may say so. And the kind of adventures and anecdotes that we have that have culminated in this long-awaited event and this evening and the realization of the same, it cannot be covered in one evening. Let me put it that way. And it is a story for another day altogether, which I am sure Professor Tiwari, our director, will say in a much more engaging fashion and much more enthralling style than I could ever do justice to it. At the very outset, I would like to thank Professor David Simchi-Levi, the star of today's evening. Professor David, whenever we hear something new about analytics or its application in supply chain management or anything innovative about supply chain management, we hear it for the first time from you. And I think that is testament to your incredible scholarship. I'm very grateful to you, Professor David, for your long association with us and for finally taking the leap to visit us. however difficult that journey might have been, and for enthralling us throughout this evening with a very significant and a milestone session, I would say. Thank you so much. In particular, what really stands out always in your style of engaging the audience and your manner of speaking is primarily the way you look at things in such an analytical and systematic fashion, and puts all the complex concepts in such a simple manner that all of us could really relate to and understand and learn from it. So thank you, sir, for sharing your nuggets of wisdom and giving such a masterclass to all of us, faculty, students, all included. This event and this historical engagement would not have been possible without the great and exemplary leadership of our director, Sir Professor Manoj Kumar Tiwari. And sir, your consistent pursuit of intellectual growth as well as scholarship has taken IIM Mumbai to unprecedented heights as witnessed today. Thank you, sir, for your continuous inspiration and guidance. A round of applause for speakers for today. Firstly, Professor Devjit Roy from IIM Ahmedabad. Thank you for your engaging session on human-AI interactions that have asked some of the hard questions that will certainly ignite a lot of thought-provoking ideas among the young students over here who are going to take this forward when they get into this discipline, specifically in logistics and warehousing, and definitely in business at large. Thank you so much, sir, for coming over here. Mr. Simchi-Levi, our very dear alumnus, and now a leading figure in this space of AI transformation. Thank you again for your long-standing commitment to the Institute and for industry and academia engagement with IIM Mumbai that is delivering newer and newer insights to academia as well as the industry. Thank you so much. This event would not have been possible without the generous sponsorship of our donor, that is Genpact, that Director Sir has already highlighted. Genpact has covered the entire visit as well as this session, as well as several other engagements. And this is all possible due to the leadership of, again, our distinguished alumnus, Mr. Divakar Singhal. And we are very sincerely grateful to them for this particular support and hope to take this forward as well in multiple other formats. A special mention, I would say, is to the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, that has gone beyond their calling in making this event possible and this engagement possible. A sort of, I would say, their commitment to the international collaboration that we have today is something that can really teach us a lot about how our country as such and relationships as such are critical to creating long-standing collaborations in the international community. Although we don't have representatives here, but definitely a note of gratitude to them. Behind the scenes of this event lies a very dynamic team of enthusiastic faculty, Professor Rofin, Professor Devarata Das, Professor Jashasvi, Professor Roni, who have all very tirelessly worked towards the culmination of not just event but several other such courses as well as several engagements whenever we are working with Professor David, all completed under the guidance of Director Sir as well as the guidance of our Dean for Research, Innovation and Outreach, Professor Vivekanand Hanapuri. Thank you to this team, and we look forward to further engagements in future days on more exciting assignments. I would also like to thank the several sets of students, research interns, student coordinators who have worked very tirelessly behind the scenes, sometimes also in front of the camera, to help take this kind of event and several such courses, specifically the global online certification courses that have resulted in this kind of engagement. It is certainly a kind of standard that we are all very proud of that they have set. My sincere appreciation to all the administrative support that has been extended by the Institute under the capable leadership and guidance of our Director, Deans and Chief Administrative Officer, right from from the Director's Office to the Research Consulting and Business Development Office, Academic Section, Career Development Section, as well as the Estate, IT, Transportation, Security, Finance section, as well as the PR teams. In fact, we are right now live streaming this entire event as well. Last but not the least, my sincere thanks to all our dear faculty members and officers, our very beloved students, for their enthusiastic participation and for their support in attending in today's session, and for asking all the very interesting questions to our speakers as well. Thank you to one and all, and have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We will now play the national song Vande Mataram, followed by request everyone to remain standing for the group photo.
Thank you.
Please remain seated. Please remain seated. Thank you. All faculty, officers, and distinguished guests are requested to proceed to 6th floor BGMP. Students are requested to remain seated.